Well, after that last video, this one makes way more sense now. This is my specialty, working with trauma. We've got 4 main points. The last 2 are the most important. Let's go. Like almost everything that we do with children, the first thing that we want to do, especially when we're working with trauma, is to be open and honest. If we're not being open and honest, we are not going to get the responses we want, because these children can just smell it. They can just tell when we're not telling them the truth. And why would you tell someone the truth if they're completely lying to you? It doesn't last long. It doesn't last forever. And eventually it's going to come back to bite you. Tell them the truth. I know it's more tricky. I know it can be harder. I know there's things that we don't want to share. Find the way that you can share it, or explain that literally you've got a line right there and you can't explain it. You can't use that one too much. That's the only way to back out of this one. Be open, tell them the truth. If you are not telling them the truth, do not expect truth. When it comes to trauma, these children are honed in. They know what's true, they know what's not. They've almost just got an intuition and just a gut feeling about this stuff. You don't want to play with lying to them. I've seen children literally burrow through walls. I've seen the aftermath of children literally burrowing through walls because other people have lied to them. I've seen complete relationships with entire companies and organizations break down because one person connected to this child has lied to them just too many times. Actually, really, it's usually systemic, but still, one lie, one massive hole in the wall. I might be able to put up a picture. I don't know if I've got it. Let's see. Second point, it's almost like truth, but it's a little bit different. Honesty. If these children ask us something, we can't just come up with some garbage. We can't just push them off all the time. We need to be open. We need to be honest. Like I said, every now and then you can say that's a line you don't cross, but that means that majority of the time, 99.999% of the time, you need to be telling them the truth. You need to be honest. You need to sell yourself out, especially if they ask. You just can't hold things back. You need to figure out exactly, I'm going to get to it in a bit, but you need to figure out exactly what's appropriate depending on the context and where you're doing this. And you need to push that line as much as you can. You're not going to feel comfortable, which is going to be the tricky part. You need to push past some of that comfort just to be more honest to these children. Again, I understand that it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel right to a degree. But if we don't do it, we end up with much worse problems in the end. Do the work now, make it harder now. It'll be so much easier later. Hard now, harder later. These conversations are going to be awkward. There's going to be so many different awkward conversations that you're going to have if you're being open, if you're being honest, if you're being truthful. These children these days have so many questions that when I was younger, you wouldn't have thought about asking. I'm sure it's even different, even worse, or even whatever for people that are even older again. Seriously, you need to have these awkward conversations. I don't care how awkward you feel. You got to assume that they feel a little bit awkward as well, but they're asking for a reason. And if you're not open, if you're not pushing into that awkward, if you're not taking yourself out of your depth, again, how can you expect them to? These awkward conversations could be about all kinds of things. They could ask about your past. They could ask about drugs that you've done. They could even get sexual. Depending on the context, you might need to do this with a traumatized child. Make sure the parent knows. Make sure it's all up front. Make sure that you're keeping notes and mental notes and all kinds of notes. Make sure that you're disclosing all of these conversations. That's where the appropriate thing comes in. In different contexts, it can be hard to have these kind of conversations. It can be literally illegal sometimes, or borderline illegal, to have these kind of conversations. But with traumatized children, this is one of the areas that they're going to be taken advantage of, that they're going to be left vulnerable, and that they're going to have people coming at them. You literally need to have a lot of these awkward conversations. Figure out exactly where your lines are, exactly where you can do it. Push a little bit past them. Keep it exactly within the realm and the scope of where you're at. But if it's in your home, it's your responsibility to have these awkward conversations. You get to decide what's appropriate. You get to decide what's not appropriate. Who cares about anything at that point? You know your family, you know your children, you know what you're trying to do. If it's in your house, do what you need to do. If it's not your child and it's in your house, make sure that all of this stuff is open and up front, that you discuss absolutely every bit of it, and that you do your best to disclose everything that goes on. If you do that, who cares what anyone else says? Who cares about any lies? Who cares about whatever garbage people want to leave in my comment section? Done. Next, you want to be non-reactive. You want to develop the best poker face you can. These children say some of the funniest things. These children can say some of the dumbest things. You want to do what you can to keep your poker face, to keep completely blank, calm, whatever. If you can bluff them like that, you can win so many of these arguments that are going to come the older that they get. You can win so many of these little battles that you might not even realize are going on, where they're jockeying for position. This is going to sound bad, but who cares? Just like an animal. I've got a male dog right now, and he is getting more and more testosterone in his body, just like a 10-year-old boy, just like these children when they get to like that 14-year-old. There we go. That's my ages. 10 to 14 are the children that I try to work with. Those two ages are just like the terrible twos. They're trying to separate from you after they've connected with you. They've done their bonding, they've done their growing, and now they're going out into the world to test this stuff. They're going to aim this stuff at you. If you've got a poker face like that, if you can manage to not respond for the most part to the crazy and insane and hilarious things that they do and say, you're going to win so much. When they're lying to you, you don't want to let them know that you know that they're lying to you. You want to be able to keep that poker face, especially when they're lying, because if you can let them be in that doubt and you know for a fact that they've done this thing, if you're not going to show this traumatized child that you know that they're lying, you're going to show that you're a safer person. This means that you're going to be able to bring that stuff back in later. And as long as anything that you're ignoring for the moment, you come back and address, you are going to gain so much respect, you're going to gain so much authority, and you are going to gain so much trust and be able to keep having these open and honest conversations. That's how you build relationship. That's how you build connection. And that is the only way to start truly correcting these traumatized children. The next point that we've got here is that just connected to being the open and honest and stuff, connected to the poker face even, you can laugh. You can laugh at these things. Don't get me wrong. You can completely break and lose your character because a lot of the time, breaking is being non-reactive. If we're breaking, if we're being honest, they're not going to tell, or they're going to be able to see that we're not holding back, that we're not lying. There's something in your eyes when you're laughing or crying or whatever it is that you're doing that is inauthentic. And again, these traumatized children are going to read that. That's how they've kept themselves safe. I've seen it before. We've got our logical brain, and that wraps around our reptilian brain. As soon as we get, triggered, heightened, when we get into that fight and flight mode, all of the logic goes flying out the window, and all we got left with is those automatic reactions. That's where I truly believe that this stuff and being able to read people, this non-reactive stuff, really comes in. Because I really feel like these traumatized children, these people that have gone through a lot, have kept themselves safe, at least in their own minds, by being able to read when someone is completely full of garbage. If we're not full of garbage, they've got nothing negative to read, and all we're giving them is those good triggers that are going to keep them connected to us, that are going to keep them trusting us, and that are going to actually grow that rapport, actually grow this relationship over time so that we can help them, so we can cut through that big tough defense, so that we can cut through their lies and their garbage, because they're going to think that they've kept themselves safe like this, but really all they're doing is setting themselves up to get used by an actual abuser in the future. Next point that we've got here is that this non-reactive stuff is almost about control. It's from a movie called Training Day, but the quote basically is, this guy's figured out the streets. If you can control your smiles and you can control your cries, you can control basically everything. If you can decide when you're going to break, for the most part, if you can decide when you're going to laugh, when you're going to cry, how it is that you're going to respond to the situations, you can actually plan ahead. You can actually decide what you're doing. You can actually come in and make a real difference. If you're just blowing off the handle and doing that exact same thing all the time yourself, how can you teach anybody else to regulate themselves? How can anybody trust you? And how are you going to actually have a plan and stick to it? Because all of our plans are going to get tested. Every time that we're trying to do something good, the negative is going to come in and try and tear it down. It's just how it works. As long as you're open and upfront and you're trying your best to control this stuff, or to at least let it out how and when you want to, boom, you are going to go very far. You're going to win, and this stuff is going to be completely easy. Your family and your life and your home, that peace in your house are going to be completely night and day if you can figure this one out. Third point, we want to be a detective. We need to get on the case. Whether that's a good or a bad case, whatever's going on, if there's something good going on, we want to figure out exactly why. We want to figure out what it is that's fed into those good, happy feelings or heightened feelings. If it's something negative and we see people going down, we need to get on the case and figure out what it is that's beating this child down, what it is that is causing the pressure. First thing we want to look at is, what have we done? If we can take ourselves out of this equation, we're going to be a much better detective. If we can start to bring in that child and the things that we know about them in their day and their week and their month and their life, the more that we know, the more data that we've got, the better that we've got of having a high probability of getting the right answer. That's all we're doing here. We're playing a probability game. We're figuring out what the best chance, the best option that we've got is, and we're moving forward with that. Even better if we get the person to tell us. But right now, we're talking about being that detective. We're talking about getting on the case. We're talking about cracking the code. We're talking about figuring out what truly happened. One person is usually not going to have the answer. Usually it's going to take 2, 3, 4. That's why we have multiple witnesses. That's what we're doing by being a detective. We're adding all these different pieces together, figuring out exactly what it is that we can pull in to make our case the strongest case possible, to pass it to the prosecutor, to put that hat on, and to figure out the actual solution. First thing as a detective that we need to do is figure out the baseline. If we don't know the baseline of this child, that's where all that information gathering goes. If we can establish their baseline and figure out what is their normal, at least for now, then we can figure out where things are going up and down. We can figure out what's going on from there. Baseline is number one, because if we don't establish a baseline, we can never figure out what's going better or going worse. We are never going to do it. We're going to be running around trying every different little bit and piece of thing, just like anything we do in life. We want to figure out that complete baseline. We want to figure out what's actually going on first. From there, we can figure out what an actual spike is, because otherwise we've got no idea if we're traveling like this. How are we going to know when something's going up or down? Baseline first, because you've gathered the information and got yourself on the case. Next thing we want to do is those spikes. They are our patterns. From our baseline, where things are going up and down, we're going to start to figure out what's going on a day, a week, an hour, 5 seconds before this stuff blows up. If we can figure out the pattern, if we can figure out where things are going good and where things are going bad, like I mentioned at the beginning of this detective bit, then we are going to actually be able to change this stuff. If we don't figure out baseline, if we don't figure out the pattern, if we haven't chosen to pick up the case, we have no chance of actually solving these problems, of actually healing these traumas. And that's why I believe most people are going to tell you that you are not healing trauma. You can heal these things. You can change these things. I've stopped a girl from walking around looking at her shoes, breaking down when she goes out to the shops with her friends to have fun. Same person, stopped them from cutting. They had one relapse. We did this within, 2 or 3 months. It was because I listened, because I looked for these kind of things. That's how you do this work. I also just got them more confidence. All within about 6 months of working fairly closely enough. Actually, to be honest, it was kind of on and off because I was out and doing my own work at the same time. That's how powerful these things are. Do the work and everything can work itself out if you've got the right information, if you're trying your absolute best and being completely open and honest. As soon as you're lying, as soon as you're garbage, why bother being a detective? You're a liar and you don't deserve to have that badge. The next thing we want to do, because we've got the baseline, we've started to work out the patterns, now we can go in and even zero in more on those patterns and work out the anomalies. What are the things that have come out of nowhere and made a different reaction? That's going to just bring us back and cycle through this detective mode. We're going to have more information for next time. We want to work out that baseline. We want to work out the patterns. The anomalies are those things that come out of absolutely nowhere. As soon as we can start to realize them, we're going to start to see the pattern in these differences, in these changes, in the little things that set people off. From there, we are going to know so much more about these people. We're going to be able to make an even better pattern recognition next time. We're going to really start to figure out their true baseline, because this is going to seem to change the more that we get to know these people. The baseline of the person doesn't really change as they grow and as they evolve 100%, but in the short term, in the couple of months, that shouldn't change too much, but our perception of it is going to change as we see how some of these anomalies react them and trigger them in different ways. When we can start to get to the point where we're establishing patterns on our patterns and our anomalies, we are going to start to understand these people so much more. We're going to be digging into their sub and their super conscious, and they are not even going to know how we're basically looking like a mind reader, how it seems like we've got perfect intuition, but all we've done is played the probability and worked out the patterns. That's how this is done. The more that we can do this with children, the more that we can do this with people that are completely non-verbal. I've seen patterns with literally 2-month-old, if even 2-month-old children, and I've said, if the parent keeps doing this, here's what the child's going to be like. Lo and behold, a few years later, not even years, within about a year, all of those things started happening because that parent didn't change those things. That message didn't get passed on. Now they've got just issues that they got to break and that they've got to deal with that, like I keep saying, would have been hard back then, but they're even harder because it's much, much later now. Fourth point, we want to be a skillful doctor. We need to be very, very careful with this kind of stuff. This is about trauma. This is about deep hurt. This is about things that we're potentially not qualified to dig into. As long as we're ready, willing, and able to make referrals, as long as we're happy to not just be inflating our ego and try and be some kind of disgusting, messed up savior, as long as this isn't about us and this is actually about keeping the other people alive, we are fine with referring people on. If people need counseling, good, go get it. If people need a psychologist or a psychiatrist, go get it. Everybody could use a checkup at the doctor. Let's just leave it at that. Everyone should just go and start referring people onto these other people that are more skilled in different ways, more highly niched in. Let's go with that. We can add to this stuff and they can go there and come straight back to us. It's that simple. Refer people. That's what a good doctor does. That's my disclaimer because we're talking about trauma. Next thing we want to do though is we want to be cutting out this cancer quickly. When we realize this stuff, when we realize there's a problem, as soon as we realize that there's something holding this person back, causing damage to them or somebody else, or honestly, even selfishly to ourselves, we need to cut this cancer out. If this is truly something that's in the other person's best interest, in this child's best interest, good. Cut the cancer out. The longer that's in there, the more it's going to infect, the more it's going to influence, the more they are going to be messed up, the more cancer we're going to have to cut out. There's only so many cells we've got in our body, and if they all get rid of with cancer, what's going to happen? We don't want that. We need to be cutting out the cancer. Next thing we want to be doing is supporting and rehabbing any of their injuries. This isn't just about keeping a crutch on people forever. There's a lot of people that go into that Munchausen syndrome stuff. They'll literally try and keep somebody sick. They'll try and keep somebody down. They'll try and claw you down as you're pulling your way up. They're definitely not the kind of people that we want around, but that's definitely not who we want to be. A good and skillful doctor is going to support people and rehab people. They're going to be doing everything they can to get themselves out of a job, to do themselves out of a job. You don't want to be there as a crutch forever. You are doing what you can to support people as minimally as possible, but to support them so they're not hurting more. That's all that supports and rehab are about. Once those supports and those rehab can kind of taper off a little bit, now we've got to the braces. We've got removing these braces, letting them do more and more and more on their own, letting them do more and more, which is going to be painful. It's going to hurt a bit, and it's going to hurt us as people that care and as their parents, watching and seeing them go through these things. But we've got to do that. If we take away their opportunity to learn, if we take away their opportunity to grow, which always involves pain, we are taking away their opportunity to grow and to become humans and to become just a bigger human adult person. We want them to go better and further than we have. So we need to actually get comfortable with sitting there and watching them in pain. It hurts, it's not fun, and it seems kind of heartless, but it is the only way to let people grow. It's the only way to get people to evolve and to get stronger and to get bigger. We need to remove the braces and watch them struggle a little bit. The next thing we want to be doing though is as we remove these braces, we can put in some guardrails. These guardrails are going to let them keep themselves on track. It's kind of like the train tracks. The train can go too fast and fall off the rails. We can't really control that. But if we've set down the right tracks, if we've helped those tracks and those guardrails be a little bit looser, just like our boundaries, if these things are moving and growing and shaping and changing, I'll put a video to boundaries up right now. If we have these boundaries so that they can move and so they can open up, that's how we grow, that's how we get stronger. It's just like if we're going to the gym and we're getting bigger muscles, we need a bigger shirt, or these things are going to start to restrict us. We don't want to be that thing restricting and making something in our child wither and die that was going to make them strong and bold and human. We need to leave these things happen, as hard as that is. We need to do this smartly, and if we've got a plan ahead to get rid of and to set up these guardrails and guide rails, to get rid of some of these braces, to do that proper rehab, they're going to go far, and we're going to be happy parents with very, very happy children. That's how you do it. What we need to be ready, willing, and able to do is watch from a distance. That's the tricky thing. We're sitting there with gritted teeth going, oh, don't go that way, don't go this way, oh. But it's their choices, it's their life. If we don't let them learn now, how much greater is their fall going to be later? It's going to be huge, because if they can't learn this stuff as they grow, they're going to get bigger, stronger, bolder, and be around other people that are bigger, stronger, and bolder. That will slam them down. That will use them and abuse them. That will absolutely decimate them if we don't let them practice and learn now. It's a very tricky game, and we need to know that we know our children enough to be able to do this stuff. We need to know that we can actually come in and read and to actually define who these people are and to really guide them, to really propel them forward. That's how you win. That's how you do it. It's completely tricky, but I trust that if you're sitting here watching this stuff still at 19, nearly 20 minutes, you actually care, so you definitely got this. You can do this. Get the support and the help that you need. Keep on hammering. Keep on doing it. You can do this. Your child needs you. Be there for them. Spend the time. Find the resources. Just keep working. No matter what they're going through, no matter what it is that they've done, no matter what it is that's getting on your nerves, this can be fixed. Any trauma can be moved past, can be dealt with, can be healed. Let's just call it how it is. Any trauma can be healed. You can do it. See you later.